well for Magnus if he's going to make blunders in bullet.
Well, as LL Cool J said to Merriam-Webster Dictionary yesterday, don't call it that. It's not a comeback. Arjun's been here for years. He may be young, but he is super strong, and he's been around these parts before. He's played the top players in the world, and I think, Denny, kind of what we're getting at is that when Arjun just won that game, it wasn't like, oh, he got fortunate because Magnus miscalculated. It was Arjun outplaying Magnus. From the start, Magnus played some offbeat opening. Then Arjun gained the upper hand in the end game. And look at Magnus, by the way, right now. He's like kind of slapping the air. Seems like something's wrong in his camp.
Yeah, we know we have the players on camera in all kinds of different ways, fair play proctoring all over the place. But we've been able to see Magnus. He was mostly in his chair eating at the break, if you're wondering. But yeah, he right now looks a little like didn't like his position or didn't like the start or something there.
But to my eyes, his position looks quite nice. He's got double fiend ketos, and both players do. And Magnus, he's looking towards that center, the D4 pawn. Can be captured, but do you want to release the tension this early? That remains to be seen. So, Danny, as I look at the clock, about even. As I look at the position, dynamic, not symmetrical. So we got the hanging pawn structure. Would you rather have the white or black side?
Big question. I actually love playing hanging pawn positions because they're just fun and aggressive. So I probably, again, side with Arjun. I like his openings. I like his style. And here comes activity. Knight's on e5. Can I put my other knight on b5? At the same time, just want to call out the other side. Every exchange that happens from here on out, advantage Magnus. That's the problem with hanging pawns, is they are targets and weaknesses. So you got to prove your activity, or Magnus will grind you down.
Such an important point that if this knight on e5, for example, gets traded for, say, this knight that just went to b8, then the c4 pawn is already in black sight. So we look at this position. We like the potential activity that white gets, but we dislike the pawns are hanging pawns. They're loose. They can be attacked. And queen f3, I don't really see why it deserves a question mark. It looks perfectly reasonable to me, but I think black can consider a simple development move.
I think that might even be it. If the knight is traded, c4 is weak. Now, you can't play knight fd7. Watch out for f7. But Magnus first plays a6 to stop knight to b5. What a move. And that is the best move, apparently, unless Robert sneakily threw that exclamation point on the board. I think the computer likes it.
Knight d7 was a blunder. I'll show that ever so quickly. The knight d7, the kind of instinctual move, knight b5, and the queen's under attack. It goes to b8 and knight c6. Fork City, Forktown, USA. And that's winning in exchange for white.
Very nice. Okay, so that's why Magnus plays a6. Heads up on the tactics, but immediately probably knight bd7 is coming next, or even knight to c6. They're both possible moves here because all black wants, as we've highlighted, simplify, and then those pawns become weak in the center.
And you see that Arjun's in a deep think. This is what he cannot afford to do. He's down a minute, and if we're looking at the position, it's not like Magnus has done all that much. He's not posing these severe questions, but I think Arjun looks at the position like, well, how am I supposed to get out of this? And I think what he just did is excellent. You see the exclamation point, Danny, that wasn't me. He is trying to liquidate so he's not in danger of losing this game.
I think it's super smart, especially given what was happening off the board, right, on the clock. It was getting away from him. I think a draw here is not a bad result, given that he won the last game, that being Arjun. So keep this thing close within a couple of games. Don't overpress here if it's gotten away from you.
And we see mass liquidation, all trades here. And look at this, by the way. It looks like there was a bishop hanging on b2, but no, rook takes d5, c takes, and the rook on c6 was under attack. So everything's off, Danny. This looks like I want to call it a clear draw, but we've seen both of these players win seemingly even endgames.
Yeah, it's true. We've had a lot of games today that entered an endgame with an equal eval bar, and somebody came away with a victory. So we shouldn't assume that at all. If you're Magnus, I think you're the one pushing a teeny bit just because white's pawns are slightly split, and we see that's kind of what he's trying to work on right now, getting surgical over there.
Well, I thought you were going to hit me with the James McAvoy reference after telling me about
Marcellus Wallace. Marcellus Wallace bringing pliers in a blowtorch. Let's get surgical.
Hey, you told me it was split, so we both have our pop culture references in mind. So we see this position here. And the c4 and a3 pawns, these isolated pawns, the split pawns, that means they can be targeted. But Arjun's doing just enough. He is defending not by protecting the pawn, but by attacking the pawn on b6. So when all is said and done on c4, everything gets traded off. b6 drops as well. This position is level objectively, but I'm looking at the clock, Danny. Arjun's down to
Yep.
24 seconds.
And Magnus senses
Oh
that he can
no.
grab the. Wait. Was King of. I guess it's still a draw, but King of Three. Did he just blunder that? I'm
I think
wondering.
that he just made a move because he needed to do something, and it ends up dropping this pawn. And I don't care what the evaluation says. Drawing this game with 20 seconds on your clock against anybody, but especially Magnus, that seems very difficult. And Black at some point
Yep.
will try to get the king around. And here it comes.
Well, we probably won't have time to highlight or turn this into a rook ending lesson, but okay, what you just said is there's one plan. Black brings the king over to the queen side. The other plan is exactly what could happen with g5 here. You try to open up a second target or a second pass pawn. That's what Magnus is going for. Objectively, again, this should be a draw. The eval bar says so, but as Robert said, drawing the game with only 10 seconds is another matter.
And here the king. Oh, I see
Oh,
going to
oh.
e3 made sense. And both sides are making these little mistakes at this stage. The black king at e7. How could that be the wrong move? You ask. I honestly don't know. Where else would that have gone?
How could that? I wonder if it was Rook A1 to just get. Okay, it doesn't matter because it's somehow it transposed per the human approach to the position. So forget what the computer says. That's my vote right now. It was a miss by some tempo, but the idea is very clear. Arjun's king is stuck to the f2 pawn, but at some point that black king is going to come in and hide behind the rook and the pawn and try to make a new queen on a1.
And also, when your opponent has 2.6 seconds left, you can afford
Yeah,
to make
this.
an inaccuracy. Here it comes. Here comes the black king this
Oh,
way.
wow. Spots the g2 square. 0.3 seconds for Arjun with that move.
And just a few checks, but it's over. The a pawn
Yep.
reaches a2, and the black king comes to b1, and that's that.
Arjun almost catches Magnus in a pre-move slip, but the best players in